Famous father of all
media is
Okay.
and the press and
3:59. I'll wait till it says 4 o'clock. And there's no argument.
Yeah, Georgie's.
Oh, come on, change already.
Here we go. 10 seconds.
Okay, well, good afternoon. It's 4 o'clock, so I will call this committee of the whole meeting to order for August the 18th, 2022, and acknowledge that the meeting is taking place on the traditional land of the Tla'amin people. Directors, you have the agenda in front of you. Could I please have a motion to approve the agenda? Director Rabazon, Director Brander, any discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of July the 14th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing no hands, a motion to adopt the minutes, please. Director Leishman.
Adoption.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. We have no delegations, no unfinished business, and that takes us to correspondence. Item 6.1 from the Forest Enhancement Society of UC Accomplishments Update. Who would like to do what with this?
Receive it.
Receive it. Director Brabazon, Director Brander, second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Item 6.2 from the Ministry of Energy, Mines, and Low Carbon, and they're looking for input regarding their Zero-Emission Vehicle Act and acceleration of regulations. I don't know if anyone wants to say anything about that. So what is your pleasure with this item?
Move receipt.
Move receipt. Director Brander, seconded by Director Leishman. Discussion? Director Fall.
I'd just like to say, we don't necessarily need to send input, but I was really happy to see them adding incentives to the Act to support electric vehicle car sharing. I think that's a good improvement.
Yeah, I too was really happy to see the acceleration of the timeline. So I look forward to that. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor of receipt? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. Item 6.3 from Minister Rob Fleming regarding the Lang Creek Bridge.
Chair, before we consider this, I'd like a clarification. Is the time to schedule meetings with the minister at UBCM passed?
Well, Minister Fleming?
Any minister, well, and precise, yes, I'm referring to this one.
Okay, CAO?
I think we've got that on the next on the agenda. Deadline for requesting a meeting with provincial ministries, agencies, commissions, and corporations is Tuesday, August 23rd.
All right, so that's next week. That's prior to the board meeting. And a similar situation arises with 6.4.
Sure, if I may,
I'm certain.
Sorry, thank you through the chair. I do believe that the deadline to schedule meetings at UBCM with the ministers has passed.
Okay.
These are additional, item 6.4 are additional meetings. We have already scheduled meetings with various ministers after a previous board meeting.
Do you know if the Ministry of Transportation is one?
I will have to look into that, but I can get back to you there.
I believe we did have a request to meet with the Minister of Transportation regarding road maintenance issues. I remember that being approved by the board.
And Springbrook Road safety issues.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on item 6.3?
You need a motion first.
Yeah, okay, motion, Director Paul.
I'll move receipt.
Okay, seconded by Director Gisborne. Discussion on receipt, Director Gisborne.
I have a question for our staff. I believe when the Lang Creek Bridge came up, I brought up the active transportation grant funding we received and used for Myrtle Creek Bridge. This letter, the ministry is referencing us to the next intake for grant applications for active transportation projects. Do we have any projects or programs that we're applying for this next intake, or are we going to not make this deadline? That's my question. Are we getting any applications in for this funding?
CAO?
Not.
Through the chair, not to my knowledge on the active transportation infrastructure grants program, at least not that I can recall, because, well, I don't even, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'm pretty sure that we've asked Laura Rodden in planning and Patrick Devereaux in operations, and I don't think we've got anything on the books for them.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion to receive? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, 6.4. Again, it's a deadline of the 23rd. So what is your pleasure with this item?
Move receipt.
Okay, thank you, Director Gisborne, seconded by Director Fall. Discussion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, item 6.5 regarding garbage collection in Lund. Director Brabazon, move receipt. Okay, seconded by Director Brander. Discussion. Okay, Director Brabazon, then Director Gisborne.
We have no jurisdiction on this matter. This is a private company operating a service, and his problem appears to be with people of Savory Island without the U in there. So I think just leave it at receipt. There's no room for us.
Thank you, Director Brabazon. Director Gisborne.
Thank you. I believe Director Fall had his hand up before me, but I can speak first if that's okay with him. Okay, I see a comfortable shrug. Yeah, I think the same way as Director Brabazon on this one. However, there is concern, of course, as we get more tourists in the area, of garbage being left, on docks and on Ministry of Transportation right-of-ways, and sometimes going back into the bush. I suppose that if garbage is left on, say, a regional district park or on regional district property, then we would have some kind of obligation to clean it up. One of the recent questions I've been asked is, we're seeing extra garbage showing up on Ministry of Transportation right-of-ways and along the highways as well. My question is, who's responsible for, say, cleaning up along the highways? Is that to be directed to Ministry of Transportation?
It's my understanding, yes.
Through the chair, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all my comments, and yeah, I share the concern of people not understanding how to deal with their garbage. But yeah, it's a private business. We can't really get involved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. And I thank Director Brabazon for clarifying this with his comments. I was just thinking, and it's not for us to do, but if Mr. Johnson is watching this meeting, that he might best direct his concerns to a Savory group like the ASIC, the Association of Savory Island Committee. It seems to be a Savory issue to deal with, and maybe a community group on Savory can help educate people that just because they pay property taxes and just because people feel like they pay enough, they don't get free services. It doesn't work that way. But thank you.
Thank you, Director Paul. Director Leishman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting that they're not willing to pay a little bit to take their own garbage away. Can we ask staff to just respond to Mr. Johnson that it's not because he's a private company that the regional district really can't do anything? I just would like to have some follow-up for him that he doesn't think we just didn't respond.
Okay, thank you. The question was asked of the CAO, but Director Brabazon has his hand up, so we'll go to him right now.
If I read Mr. Johnson's email correctly, the garbage is being left on the dock in Lund. That's the Lund Harbor Authority responsibility. And they will have to clean it up, just as we would have to clean it up if it were our park. Or if it's left in the bush, That's the conservation officer.
Director Leishman?
So are we going to get a letter now from the Lund Harbor Authority asking us to pay for the garbage being taken away?
I rather doubt it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Is there further discussion on this item? Further discussion? Seeing no hands. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. And our final item of correspondence from Tyler Brown, Regional District of Nanaimo, regarding their legislative reform motion. Who would like to? Okay, Director Fall, receipt, seconded by Director Gisborne. Discussion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. All right, we are through correspondence, which takes us to item 7.1, the second quarter strategic plan progress report. And we have that document in front of us. There is a motion. Is there a motion that the committee recommends the board receive? Okay, so the motion, recommended motion, is to receive. Is there a mover for this recommendation? Okay, Director Leishman, Director Fall, discussion. Director Fall.
I have a question through the chair, if I might, but it would probably be best directed to Mr. Toms, and I see he's not on the call. Maybe I assume he's on holidays or something. And that was that at our last meeting, when we received all these letters from the public on fire department honorariums, we were told that there would be a meeting of the fire chiefs on July 23rd, and that's in the progress report that there was going to be a meeting on the July 23rd of the fire chiefs to advance this. And I was just wondering if there's any information on any update on a timeline of when this policy might come forward.
Yeah.
Through the chair, I will pass that on to Ryan Toms. You're absolutely correct. He's on vacation.
Okay, thank you, CIO. And if a reply by email or next meeting's fine.
Okay, thank you very much, Director Paul. Further discussion? Seeing no hands up, I had a couple of quick questions. The first is on page 9. Page 9 of the report, once again, regarding the Texada drainage study. I don't know if Ms. Rodden is with us, but I understand that we sent a letter to the ministry asking for an update regarding the status of this. And I just wondered, have we heard anything back, or has there been any progress since then? Ms. Rodden?
Through the chair, yes, I did receive an email from Mr. Michael Braun at the ministry, and he apologized for the delay in any communications around the status of the drainage study. And he said he was working internally to ensure that the project was funded in 2023. So there are no funds in this current year, but they're working on it for next year.
That's great news. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have another question, and going to page 23 of the report, and the topic is volunteers working in QRD parks and trails. I just wonder where this initiative is at. CAO.
Through the chair, is Patrick Devereaux on? There he is.
Hi, Mr. Devereaux. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the status of that, the board should have a report at the committee of the whole in September.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you very much. That concludes my questions. Anyone else have a question? Seeing none, the motion is to receive. So all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, 7.3, amendments to the public communications and engagement policy. Sorry, 7.2. All right. So there is a motion before us. It's actually in 3 parts. There's number 1, and then there's number 2, which is 2 paragraphs, and then there's number 3. So I guess if we consider them one at a time, because there's no ands in between them. So the first recommendation that we adopt Regional District Board policy and public communications and engagement as amended. Is there a mover for this recommendation? Director Brander, Director Leishman, thank you very much. Discussion. Director Fall.
Thank you, Chair, and I thank staff for making these changes. Generally, they are very good. I think pulling out the complaints part and enforcement part makes sense because it's a separate issue, and having a detailed social policy, social media policy makes sense. And I think the changes to organize it and restructure it make it a lot more clear. I have I guess a few minor points which might help. So I was trying to compare in Appendix A, there's the policy, and then following the policy, there's a one with tracked changes. And I read the ones with tracked changes, and then I read went back and looked at the first one to be sure it was correct. And I noticed in the policy statement so this is I'm looking at page 192 of our agenda, which is page 16 of the report. The last sentence of the policy statement, which starts with "this policy is intended to provide guidance and direction," that is in the tracked changes one, but it's not in the policy that's before us. So I guess 4 points, but maybe I'll just ask them one at a time. Is that meant to be in there, or was that just an oversight missing that?
So the amendment to, through the chair, if I may.
Yeah, Shelley.
Sorry, super eager. So the amendment to the policy statement was based on recommendations brought forward in the deliverables from the communications consultants that we hired to do the strategy. In order to streamline that policy section, we did change it slightly. However, of course, this is a working group, and if there's desire to have that change, we can.
Right. So I was just wondering, I guess my question is, if I asked it, is that I thought that the one with the tracked changes would be exactly the same if looking at this deleted parts and the added parts, but there's a sentence added to the policy statement in red that isn't in the one without the tracked changes. And so I wasn't sure. Pardon me?
We can ensure that's in there if that's desired. Yes.
Okay. I mean, I think it's a good sentence, and the only comment I have on it is it's missing an is.
Sure.
It's got a typo.
And change all grammatical.
Right. To ensure the QRD is consistent and responsive. So there's a missing is after QRD before consistent and responsive. I think it's a good sentence, but that's I just wasn't sure. My second comment is I really like the authority to act section. I think that's really good to clarify, the linkages to acts, statutes, and then the other policies. I think that's great. I did have a question about, I guess it's 1N, which is on page 10 of the report, page 186 of our agenda. And it's really just a clarification. So it's about board members who wish to respond to correspondence, which makes sense. I think it's good to have something in there. But it says it must clearly, that it must be on personal letterhead. And my question is, if a board member, I'm thinking about myself, for example, but if a board member responds to correspondence by email, since a lot of correspondence is by email, is it recommended, to follow this, would it be sufficient to state in the email that the views expressed by the director are personal and independent and exclusive of the QRD board and organization, and just putting that in the email, and there's no real letterhead with an email.
I believe that
so
would be
so I just wanted to be clear. Okay, thank you. And the last point is really just a minor typo, which is in item 11, public engagement section. It's page 190, page 14 of the report, and it's missing I believe it's missing an "and" between conducted and evaluated. It says public engagement activities will be conducted, evaluated. So possibly an "and" in there or something, but otherwise I think it's great. I already read it in detail, and I think it's nice to see it updated like this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Director Ball. Further discussion on this, Director Gibbon.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Fall, for bringing up number 6N, which is board members who wish to respond to correspondence in addition to an official response from the organization may do so, but must do so using personal letterhead and must clearly state that their views are independent and exclusive of the QRD Board of Directors or the QRD organization. I think this is a little backwards because myself, I believe it to be assumed that when an elected official responds to a question or inquiry from the public, their response is independent and exclusive of the QRD Board of Directors. Their response is not being sent using QRD letterhead. It's not saying, you know, this is the view of the district. When an elected official sends an email, most people assume that they're speaking for themselves. I don't have a personal letterhead, so I guess I'll have to create a personal letterhead and have just like a copy and paste that states that my views are independent and exclusive of the QRD Board of Directors, because I guess with this policy, it's not taken to be just expected. And that's kind of one of the issues I have with it. And I understand why we kind of want to have a policy that says, you know, we all want to pull the same direction. However, directors are politicians, and that means that quite often we will have contentious issues that we may not agree on. So I have a bit of reservations about number N. I think it's a little backwards myself. I think the policy should be that any response is just automatically assumed to be independent and exclusive of the QRD Board of Directors or the QRD organization, unless it is on official QRD letterhead and explicitly states that it is the view of the district. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. All right, I've got a couple of comments to make stemming from Finance Committee yesterday. And this policy is really good. Mr. Miranda, I'm really happy with what you've done, and it's going to be a big improvement for us. But there are still situations which fall through the cracks. And rather than propose an amendment here and now, I'm actually going to add a fourth recommendation that we refer the issue to strategic planning. And the reason that I'm going to refer it rather than try to make a change now is because I don't know that it should be in board policy to contact a community group when their budget is being reduced by 75% without any warning or notification. I don't know if that should be policy or if it should be just common practice in the interests of common sense and courtesy. I'm not sure what the right answer is, but I'm not going to propose any amendments at this point, but I do believe we need to have a further discussion. So I do have one question, and that is on page 12 of the report, and it has to do with media releases. I've seen press releases that have been issued by the QRD appear in print, but I didn't know anything about them. Not that I'm involved in the issue, but nonetheless, all of us as elected officials are accountable for what the regional district does. So it would be really helpful when you're sending out media releases that just for information, you send it to all members of the elected board so that we at least know that this information is out there should we be questioned on it. Can that be done? Yeah. Okay, good, thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing no hands, and this is on motion number 1, that we adopt the policy as amended. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, we're now on to item number 2, that we adopt the policy 212, the bylaw complaints and enforcement, and direct staff to complete a comprehensive review of complaints and enforcement, bringing a revised policy back. So, is there a mover for this? Director Brabazon, seconded by Director Paul. Thank you. Discussion. Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. And item number 3, that the committee recommend the board adopt policy 2.13 social media. I move for this recommendation. Director Leachman, seconded by Director Ball. Okay, discussion. Director Ball.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to make a comment. I think that it's very good to have a policy on this, and we've talked a little bit about this in the past, and we're all, I think, very aware of the risks of social media, but I think we're also seeing the need for it, or at least a motivation for it, for some announcements, because like it or not, a large segment of the population gets a lot of their information through social media, and so I think as a start, this is great, and we'll monitor it, and we'll be able to see whether it's sufficient to meet the public, which is what the goal is, while balancing those risks. And I think it does, because as I understand the policy, it mostly is about using social media to direct people to the QRD website and to the QRD, other sources of information. So it's not so much a vehicle for spreading information, it's really a vehicle to get people to join, to connect and find out what they need to find out on our established sites. Thank you.
Is that so, Shelley? Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you through the chair, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Further discussion. Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. I have a bit of an issue with Part 4, responsibilities on personal accounts. Number 4A, staff must not speak. Pardon?
Director Gisborne, what page of the report? Page 37. Okay.
Yes, 37 of the report, or 213 of our agenda. Responsibilities on personal accounts. A, staff must not speak on behalf of the QRD using personal accounts online. Regional district staff and directors must state that their opinions are their own and do not reflect the views of the organization. My first question would be, would then a director who makes a social media post, must they include in every post that their opinions are their own and do not reflect the views of the organization? Moving on to B, regional district staff and directors must not post personal comments or status updates that reflect negatively on the integrity of the organization, nor to air grievances, which should be directed through human resources. I understand why regional district staff would be in this policy. However, directors as elected officials sit in a very unique position. For C, regional district staff and directors must avoid using their personal social media channels to express opinions that could create a perception that they are unable to perform their duties in an objective or impartial manner. It is my understanding that staff are supposed to be objective and impartial. However, elected officials aren't really so often. And the problem with that is, with this language, is it could create a perception from, say, a member of the public that an elected official isn't being impartial. I see an issue with that right off the bat. So I'm going to propose an amendment. I'm going to move that reference to directors be removed from Part 4, responsibilities on personal accounts.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there a seconder for the motion? I'm not seeing a seconder. So thank you very much, Director Gisborne. Is there further discussion on this, on recommendation number 2 before we move on? Sorry, recommendation number 3. Okay, Director Gisborne, you have another comment?
Yes, if Part 4 is going to remain unchanged and places these onerous restrictions on elected officials, I cannot support this policy. And it comes down to a fundamental question that I have been asked by members of the public and by other elected officials who have had these similar discussions in their own jurisdiction. When an elected official is elected to office, on one side, they're expected to represent the public to the organization. However, our policy makes it fairly clear that elected officials are expected to represent the organization to the public. That's where I have a challenge. I believe that my job is to represent the public to the organization. And having such restrictions placed on directors in this policy, I think it's going to cause some challenges. It can cause some issues. I think directors shouldn't even be referenced in this part in relation to their personal accounts. And my understanding is a lot of other municipalities and regional districts have actually placed what goes on with social media and elected officials into their codes of conduct rather than the policy for social media, which seems to be crafted for our staff. So that is why I will actually be voting against this this policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Director Gisborne. I'm seeing no further hands. Is there any further discussion on this one? None. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Now,
Excuse me, Chair, Mark opposed.
Sorry, Director Gisborne is opposed. Thank you. Now, as the fourth motion I would like to put forward, and it would be that communications with community groups be discussed at the strategic planning session. And if there is a mover and seconder for that motion.
Chair, for clarity, can you just repeat the motion?
Yep, that communications with community groups be included as a topic for discussion at the strategic planning session. Director Fall, do you have your hand up? You move that?
Will there be a seconder, I believe?
Okay. Well, I'll second it.
Yeah, you didn't move.
I moved it. Oh, all right. Sorry. I
moved it. Okay. I'll
Okay.
second it then.
Okay, thank you, Director Paul. I think what Chexada Rescue, what that issue pointed out is that there are people that fall between the cracks. And I think it would be very awkward on anyone to find out after the conclusion of the budget process and conclusion of the collection of taxes, et cetera, that with no warning or heads up that their budget was slashed by 3/4. So I don't want to see any other group go through that situation. It's put them in a really awkward, terrible bind. And so I don't know exactly what the right answer is, but that's why I'd like to have the discussion at strategic planning, and so that all the directors can wrap their heads around it and come up with the right direction for the board to take. So that's why I'm proposing it. Director Paul.
Thank you, Chair. And I'd just like to add, I don't think, I mean, we heard these heartfelt delegations yesterday. I don't think I don't think there was any action that was not following our policy. I think the organization, the QRD, the staff did what was normal. I think what was where things became difficult was the scale. So if this was a big service and you had a small percentage and your budget's a little bit smaller, and you say, oh well, that's sure, you have to pay. That's the philosophy of QRD, of regional districts. You have to pay for the service. You ask a question, there's a cost, and that's how it works. But in this case, because of the scale, so I think I quite agree with the motion, because I think we can talk about it as strategic planning and try to figure out a solution that can work. To maybe there's a threshold, or there's something that can help know when extra steps need to be taken beyond the normal operations.
Okay, thank you, Director Paul. I agree with you completely. Director Brown.
Thank you, Chair. That the delegation you refer to was unhappy was quite evident to all of us. Why they were unhappy is evident in that they didn't get the money they wanted. How that arose was not made clear to us. They did not actually say one thing or the other. However, I'm quite willing to put this onto strategic plan, but I think we should just drop any suggestion that there is any fault on one side or the other. We don't know, so let's drop it and then just carry on.
Right, and no fault is being implied, merely that the topic be go to strategic planning for further discussion. So, further discussion on this. Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I was at the Finance Committee meeting yesterday, and yeah, they're upset. This motion before us to send it to strategic planning, I believe, is a good motion. However, one of the things I think we should be cognizant of is when it comes to public engagement, we might not always get it right. There might be mistakes, there might be challenges, not saying who or why, but these things happen. And I think that one of the best ways to rebuild the trust that sometimes we lose with the community when we say don't meet the expectation of the public engagement that we all desire, that the organization, the regional district, the board chair, something along those lines, can issue a formal apology. It's not an explicit admission of guilt. It is that we're saying that we apologize and we will try and do better in the future. That's my views on it, because we want to make sure that the community still trusts us. And when we run into these kind of issues, it harms that trust and that relationship between the organization and the greater community. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And with this motion, no apology is being contemplated, no sense of wrongdoing is being accepted, merely that the topic go to strategic planning for further discussion. So is there further discussion on that motion? Seeing no hands, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried unanimously. All right, so now we are on to, there is no new business. Question period.
Thank you, Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm wondering, with regard to social media policy, whether there's been any consideration when some platforms are used, whether there will be opportunity for public commentary and what might be done if objectionable statements are made.
See you, Mr. Randy. Shelley?
Thank you, through the chair. I think the CAO wanted to, oh, nope, okay. So yes, we have considered and reviewed best practices from other local governments. And we've also looked at the legislation, as well as we've taken a look at the worst scenarios. So in best practice, we're using this as an information sharing tool, not a commenting tool. The reason for that, pardon me, is to ensure that the public use the conventional methods that are already established for communicating with the board. And that includes appearing as a delegation, writing a letter to the board, appearing in front of the board as, writing an email to your elected official. Those are the avenues that are already available for communications.
Does that answer?
Yes, I think the communications advisor for the response. Thank you, Chair. That was my question.
Thank you very much. Any other questions out there for us? Seeing none, we are now, we have an in-camera session. Who would like to read the motion under 10.1? Who'd like to read that? Somebody would like to read it, I'm sure.
Okay, fine. I move that the committee move in camera and that the meeting to be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 90 sub 1G, litigation or potential litigation affecting the regional district. K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the committee could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public. And N, the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under a provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Isborn. Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Any opposed? We are going in camera. Thank you. Okay, so we're good to go.
Yes.
Okay, welcome back to Committee of the Whole. We have no rising report, so our meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Good meeting all.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Procedural question. Well,